Cult of the Lamb came out around a week ago. I'd been looking forward to it since when they first made the demo available. I enjoyed playing through it, helped greatly by the fact I'm a streamer, and it has a neat way to involve viewers in your cult by raffling membership and letting them create their own cultist who shows up in your base. Very cool. And it lets you murder the people who talk shit about you when you die in games. But Cult of the Lamb is a severely flawed game. First off, the obvious stuff. All the bugs and soft locks. Some of which have now been, and some of which will eventually be, fixed, but which I experienced while playing. Missions instantly failing as soon as you take them. Rooms locking you in because enemies that are supposed to appear don't. Buildings disappearing. Key buildings that you need to not disappear. Mandatory structures being impossible to build because the game locks you in your base until you do, as a form of tutorial to help you no less, but you don't have the resources for it because you didn't pick them up in the last run, and you just live there forever now, can't do anything else in the game. Missions being given by one cultist asking to be sacrificed themselves, that is then completed by sacrificing a completely different one. Frame rate all over the place, random zoom-ins, camera breaking and locking in one place, dodge roll coming out weird, sticking you in one place or barely moving you, projectiles you shoot that aren't supposed to be homing, spinning around enemies and then disappearing. The list goes on. And then there's the controls. When you swing a weapon, there's a startup period, and then you swing. You can change the direction of the swing by pushing your stick in a new direction during any part of the startup, but then you're locked in once the swing starts coming out. This feels good. However, the same applies to rolls. This feels really, really bad, and I think is actually bugged to some degree, leading to bizarre dodge roll movement, and will occasionally even cause you to almost teleport. Sometimes, you'll press roll in one direction, and while you're rolling, press the stick in the opposite, so as soon as the roll's done, you start approaching an enemy. If you do this too fast, and you move the stick during the first few frames of a roll, you will change direction or even cancel the roll or do a roll in place. Once you understand what's happening, you can be careful to avoid it, but it just feels awful and inconsistent. My assumption is that it's there to soften precision requirements, letting you change your mind in a split second, but it actually increases the precision requirements in an unsatisfying way. It's an annoyance that's easy to overcome, but which you have to always be aware exists. Visuals and audio carry this game very hard. I love both. However, while I have no criticisms of the soundtrack, the enemies do have a tendency to blend into the environment in an aesthetically unpleasing way. It's not a huge gameplay issue thanks to the massive telegraphs most attacks have, but it's definitely a small mark against the game. All these things are very surface and obvious when you experience them, but there are much deeper, core flaws that only become apparent with experience. Despite its action roguelite appearance, Cult of the Lamb is not intended to be a punishing experience. I've heard a couple of the devs say as much, and despite my personal preference for games like this to be brutal, that's fine. What isn't fine is the system that works behind the scenes, reacting to your performance to cushion your falls. I was watching a dev interview, and they explained that things like health appearing when you're doing badly, or values being tweaked on hunger or hygiene will happen if you're struggling to maintain your base, exist to prevent player drop-off from getting crushed. They don't want you to get owned and then never play their game again. That sounds all nice and lovely, but it is a massive blow in a game all about looking after little dudes. Poor little Billy, barely being brought back from the brink of death when you finish a crusade and return home with food, is far less gripping when you realize the game either did or could have been rigging timers for your success. Verisimilitude shattered. I didn't save him. I didn't barely reach the finish line in time. The game made sure I wasn't gonna fail. And speaking of those little dudes, your cult, they kinda don't matter. You need 12 in your base to unlock all 4 combat areas, and then you need 20 in your base to fight the final boss. You can comfortably beat the game on extra hard just by stocking up followers and then only indoctrinating them when you need a certain amount for a door unlock. Looking after them, using them to unlock buildings or power, entirely unnecessary. and not even that significant. After each area you beat, which can be beaten in any order, the game gets a bit harder, but not hard enough that you need upgrades. Sure, chewing up your cultists and spitting them out is on point thematically, but it's a waste of adorable design. If you commit yourself to caring about them, you'll have a good time, like I did, because I was pulling in viewers and they had my viewers' names. But that's not really baked into the game. The game doesn't force you to care. The dream version of Cult of the Lamb is an interlocking of two different style games. You manage a mini-civilization to bolster your runs in a roguelite, and you do roguelite runs to bolster your mini-civilization. The two should constantly feed and need each other. But once you've spent some time in the game, you realize how independent the two actually are, leaving you with two separate, super stripped down imitations of better games. They look and sound amazing, true, but aren't great at their core as games. In their pursuit of making Lamb Cult seem more balanced between the two main features, the devs have implemented a great deal of time wasting and the illusion of necessary systems. You can plant seeds. You can unlock a farm building that allows your followers to automatically farm seeds, but you still need to manually harvest what's grown until 3 tiers in the tech tree later. Only then are your followers able to pick the berries and pumpkins and put them in a chest for you. This means you spend a huge amount of time holding the A button on a couple dozen bushes each in-game day, inflating the time you spend in your base, making it seem more significant than it is. Besides this weird limit on what your followers can do existing to waste your time, it's also nonsensical since prior to unlocking farming, your followers can, in fact, pick berries from existing bushes in your base and place them in a general use chest. They just forget this once you start improving. At first, unlocking the buildable resource node seems like a no-brainer. Passive material gain while you're out fighting. Great, but the wood and stone nodes require a good chunk of wood and stone to make, and their output is finite. And the length of time it takes to suck them dry means if you simply don't build them, you'll progress faster and get more resources than if you do. But you might think, that's not forward thinking. In the long game, you'll end up with more. And herein lies the rub. There is no long game. If you blaze crusades and pick relevant resource nodes when they appear, you'll have all you could ever need, cap the tech tree far before beating the game, and build everything before the resource nodes could ever catch up. It's literally just pretending to have depth by having things a deeper game would. Now here's a funny one. Toilets are a trap. A large amount of time can be spent roaming your base, cleaning up puke and poop. So when you hit the tier of the tech tree with toilets, it's relief, progress, automation. However, you're actually just creating a problem for yourself. If you build a janitor station and no toilets, disease will be automatically kept at bay. All puke and poop will be cleaned up by followers whether you're there or not. If, however, you build toilets, then the toilets will fill, contributing to disease, and require manual emptying by the player. Yet more holding the A button to pad out playtime. Sure, you get fertilizer, but you really don't need it, and you can get it while out playing the action part. On the roguelike side, there are also a couple of weird examples of fake depth. The game features Isaac-style red hearts, blue hearts, and black hearts. But there's really no reason for these all to exist when the runs are so short. You can't take advantage of their unique properties because there simply isn't time to. The tarot cards as well seem tuned to a much longer run. These are your equivalent of passive items in Isaac, or many other roguelike games. But there are cards that do things like damaging all enemies a minuscule amount when you hit half a heart left. It's the negative from Isaac, but I have never, ever been in a situation to use it the same way you could in that game. Instead, it either does nothing or triggers once in the entire run. The cards that do matter aren't interesting. Raw damage up, extra health, resource-relevant cards that lose their shine when you realize how the game really works. I've compared Lamb to Isaac a lot for obvious reasons, but it's also like Gungeon in that success can be decided by skill to a greater degree than in many other roguelites. Thing is, Gungeon recognizes that means extreme variety is key, because if all you're getting is a 20% damage upgrade here or an extra heart there, who cares? 1, that doesn't impact my run much, and 2, it's just not exciting on its own. Even in Isaac, where a damage up is huge and enough to be excited about on its own, it comes with flavor. It will change how your dude looks. It's styled in an interesting way. When going in raw to a run is totally viable, the stuff you get on a run needs to have extra cool factor, because the impact of those items is less drastic. Speaking of Gungeon, how many different guns are there? Too many to recall, with wildly varying properties. In Lamb, there are 5 weapons: sword, dagger, claw, hammer, and axe. The dagger is straight dog shit. The others, they're alright. And they come in such wild flavors as does more damage than usual, or adds a bit of poison damage sometimes. There's no real sense of making a build or finding synergies. The closest maybe is when you have a hammer and get an attack rate up card. Some of the curses, the spells you can use are visually cool. I'm thinking of the tentacle blasts and the ghost shot, but mostly they're very slight variations on a handful of archetypes. Again, it merely pretends to have what other games have. Also, I need to say again, fuck the dagger. It has a 5-hit combo with a delay between the 4th and 5th hit. This just opens you up to getting hit, so it's garbage and you should never do the full combo. There's much more I could talk about, but I'll leave you with one final example. The Cake Taker, the most broken thing in the whole game, aside from the issues that literally break your save. The Golden Fleece. As you play through the game, you'll unlock little single-screen side areas with NPCs. There's a fishing minigame, low-stakes gambling, a stoner cult, and a cursed casino. They all look amazing and all that jazz, but their contribution to the game is collectibles that can be swapped for fleeces. Equipment you wear one of at a time to alter the way the Lamb plays. There's one that makes a curse-focused style more viable, one that swaps your starting red health for more blue health, stuff like that. But then there's the Golden Fleece. This one gives you a damage bonus for every enemy killed, which resets when you take damage, and you take double damage. Now we're talking 10% extra damage per kill, capping at... Wait, it doesn't cap? You can literally get 1,000+ bonus damage and delete bosses if you're careful? Once you've taken the Golden Fleece spell, nothing else in the game matters. And if you're like me, you might even do a run where you do nothing but rush the Golden Fleece, do 0 cult management except for what you're forced to do, and beat the game purely by playing carefully, and gaining more benefit from this one novelty item than you ever could from babysitting baby animals. There's no turning back from it once you realize it's the best way to free yourself from the Skinner box design. I really like Cult of the Lamb. I'd love to have that Lamb plushie. I listened to the soundtrack. It fucking sucks though. It's a bad game. The little bit of gambling you can play in the cabin with Ratau and his friends is greater on its own than the production is as a whole in terms of being a game. But, as usual, that's just another one of my harmful opinions.